And good morning, everybody. We are live. Congratulations. You made it through the week. Another week of amazing food safety, food quality, fantastic products that we enjoy every day and never given a second thought to food safety because we know that you're on the job. But a lot of times there's no recognition for that. So Jill and I are going to say today, good job. We appreciate everything you did this week. Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you. So if you're new, pull up a chair. This is the Food Safety Chat Live, and every Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern, we sit down for an hour, and I bring a guest on to talk about a food safety topic, and it's just an amazing conversation. And of the community that we're building here and the people who are here every week, like Larry and Bonna, really good to see you guys. So man, we got a ton to go over. So one of the things that we love to do here on the chat, and Jill and I were chit-chatting about this, right? The fall is definitely here. We're moving into winter. And here in Loveland, Colorado, where I am, I think we had our first frost here 2 nights ago, Jill, but no snow yet. But so how's the weather been for you?
Yeah, well, we were blessed. Yesterday we got snow. It's the early season snow. And so it was the big, heavy, wet snow. And we actually still have it out. I mean, we still have snow even today because we had that much. It was a few inches. Wow. But we'll take it. We didn't have rain for a long time. So it rained and then it snowed, and we're going to take all of it. We're happy to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we finally... So in Colorado, you turn your sprinkler off, and you're trying to time that, and you got to have the people come out and blow out the lines and all that stuff. So that's part of that ritual of fall as well. So we did that here last week, which is kind of late. Oh, Larry's waiting for the dad joke.
See, everybody's on that.
It's coming, I promise you. Actually, Larry sent me some more dad jokes here the other day. So if you have any suggestions for dad jokes and you want me to use them on here, yeah, definitely. Send me on LinkedIn or on my email here, of course, which is right here. Send me your dad jokes. Send me your best dad jokes. Yes. Allie is here in North Carolina.
No, I think Tim's missing the snow. Come on, Tim. I know you're thinking Minnesota looks good right now.
Yeah. I mean, so Elaine is here. So Elaine has been on fire. She's been doing tons of good stuff on LinkedIn. We appreciate all you do. And it's always a good Friday when you see that Tim's at home. Tim put some really, really cool posts on LinkedIn with what he's up to and his family. And it's really cool that he shares that. So if you don't follow Tim and you're not connected with Tim, definitely. And generally, right, everybody that's on here, we should all be connected with each other, which is part of the reason why we're doing this.
Yeah. So, good morning, Jordan. Good to see you in Seattle, and Morgan.
Nice. So as Larry alludes to, are you ready, Jill? Are you ready for the dad joke?
I'm ready.
Okay. All right. What do you call a cow with no legs?
And I should know this because I grew up on a dairy farm. But we never really thought about what a cow with no legs would be.
Ground beef.
Wah, wah.
Wah, wah, wah.
We did always threaten them, though, if they didn't milk enough, that we would send them to McDonald's. I mean, that was the closest thing we could come up with. And then they, usually shaped up.
There you go. That's right.
I should have known.
Duncan, of course, over on the other side of the pond. Good to see you. Duncan, of course, has a nice, strong presence on LinkedIn as well, right? So use LinkedIn, use that tool and build your network and make sure and make those connections. So one of the things, I mean, I was ready to dive in. I almost skipped the simultaneous sip. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
So Morgan's here just to see you. Awesome.
Hello.
Nice to see you, Morgan. So I think you're going to be very impressed with our topic today. And this is
sorry, Tim's putting another dad joke in there.
Oh, come on, stop it. Stop it. So this is kind of a first for the food safety chat because Jill and I, this is a twofer. So on Wednesday, we started this topic, barely scratched the surface. And this is kind of part 2 of that conversation. So here at the end of the chat, I'll put the link in to part 1 so that you can go to Jill's site at Catalyst and check out the first part of this to get more information on our topic today. So guys, let's dive in. We got a ton to go over here today. I don't know if we'll get to it all. So part of what we emphasize, and Jill just does an amazing job of this with Catalyst, with Tia, is that we emphasize, I know you guys do a really, really good job of this, is there's two main buckets of skill sets that you need to have to be successful in food safety, quality assurance, and frankly, anything that deals with the technical aspect. Is you need to know your stuff, right? You need to, you're not going to be a very good dairy farmer if you don't know how to keep care of your cows. You need to know all of those things you need to do your job successfully. But that's only part of it. Another piece, which is actually a bigger piece in most instances, is your ability to work with others, right? We've all seen this, Jill, right? Where you have somebody who's brilliant at what they do, but they're just a jerk, right? And you don't like working with them, and they're not successful in their career, are they?
No, and they don't even have to be a jerk. Just even thinking about how often in the past, and even some people we've worked with, they're brilliant, but they haven't, it's a challenge to move things forward at the pace that they want, or to even bring people around to go, oh, I see where that could fit for us. Just because we lead with data and science. And so how do we bring in those human skills to really advance our technical knowledge? That's really what it's about. And when we do that, then we get to help open doors for business and help our team meet goals. So all of it is a win-win, but it's definitely learned behaviors and learned skills.
Yep. And I think it's around 80%. I'm just kind of pulling that out of the air. That statistic may not be correct, but it's directionally true, is when we meet new people, right? We very quickly evaluate them and figure out what we think of them. And those nonverbal communication cues and how we present ourselves and how we talk and all these types are a gigantic influence on how we're able to effectively get things done. And really, that's our topic here for today, is persuasion and how that works and some of the basics around it. Right? This is one of those topics, Jill, you can study your entire life, because this is human behavior. This is how we interact with each other. We're social animals, and it's an important thing to be able to do, isn't it?
It is. And, I think, like you said, we could study it forever. And I think it shows the complexity of how many different approaches there are, along with, when you put in situations and people, there's always different things to consider when you think about, how do I persuade someone, influence somebody? But at the end of the day, all of that comes back to, how am I setting people up for success?
Yeah.
How am I setting the business up for success? So even how we frame it in our mind about, it's not that we're trying to persuade them, and it's kind of, I think on Wednesday we said kind of that used carsman, salesman, thing that feels a little bit cringy. But really it's about, like, how do we lead with heart to help people have success? And that's our job, especially as leaders and as technical people, when we're like, gosh, somebody else needs to move that forward, or I have to wait for permission. No, they hire you to do this job, just this job.
I think that's a huge mistake on the part of technical people, is, like you said, Jill, they view this as something like, that's not, that's awful, right? It's the used car salesman, what can I do to get you in a car today type approach to things. But no, anybody who has children, right, knows that they are master negotiators, right? They go in, they know what they want. Just if you're in the grocery store, why do they put all the goodies for the kids at eye level for the kids? And why do they have all the candy sitting by the registers, right? Because they know the kids are going to want those. And the kids are very good at figuring out how to get what they want. And it's not necessarily, they figure out at a very young age that, how do you respond to different stimuli, right? So the one kid figures out that screaming until they get what they want works, so they keep doing that. Other ones figure out that, doing the puppy dog eyes or what have you is what gets them what they want. And they know how to get it. Dogs, your pets. Oh my gosh, do your pets know how to get what they want from you? Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
In fact, they've actually trained me to get what they want. So
yeah. And so my dog, my wife takes my dog Noodle for a walk in the mornings. And when it's walk time, right? Dogs are creatures of habit. He sits there and stares at her. And then after a while, if that gets no reaction, he'll start kind of doing the, right? To come on, right? So that they definitely know how to do that. And whether we know it or not, and this is a hard fact of life, guys, you got to swallow this one. We need these skills, and these skills are absolutely critical to our success. And one of the things we talked about on Wednesday was, even if you're head of quality assurance in a large company, you have a large team of people working for you and all these type of things, even then, maybe 5% of the company actually reports in through you. So everything that you need to get done within the company outside of that sphere, that other 95% is all based on your ability to persuade other people and let them see why they need to do what it is that you're asking them to do.
Yeah. And, I think I shared too that early in my career, when I wasn't as skilled at understanding how to connect, and this is really about relationships and connecting with people, because persuasion is, we often hope for win-win outcomes. That's our real goal. But earlier, right, I would provide information, data, reports, recommendations, whatever that was. I would see risk and be like, here's what we need to do. And if no action was taken, I was like, I have notified you. And it was almost this, like, I have shifted this risk and this responsibility to someone else. But of course, now I kind of chuckle when I think about when I did that, because I did not shift any responsibility or ownership. It was just my way of almost like going around the situation instead of building the skills to really help move it forward. Yeah. And so, whether it's me or as I hear people that come through, our boot camp and other programs, those are some of the challenges that we run into, and they're real. I mean, if you're out there and you've run into it, right, drop an emoji in, because I don't know, I'm guilty. I have done it. But I think the other part is when we have these conversations, they help us see, one, there are some different ways to approach it. And we're not alone, because there are days we do want to throw our hands up and be like, I give up. Yeah. They'll never get it. But are we willing to get back in there?
Yeah. So. Yeah. The last thing you want to do in those situations is, say, okay, the data speaks for itself. They can figure it out. And then when something goes wrong, you say, well, I told you so. Right.
Right.
Oh, nobody likes that. Right. That's a bad path to go down. So don't be that person.
Yeah. And 20 years ago, when I was early in my career, 25 years ago, probably could have gotten away with that. But we are in a different environment when it comes to risk, liability, all of these other factors. And so at this stage of the game, as just a professional responsibility, like, that is our professional responsibility.
Yep, absolutely. So we're going to kind of break this down in there's 4 main areas, and this is based upon an amazing book, and I'll put the name in here in the comments. The Secrets of Power Persuasion by a gentleman named Roger Dawson. And this book, so one of my habits through my life, and you can see the big collection of books that Jill has, and this is an important habit, is, so I'll read books, and there's certain books that I deem as keepers, because I will go back to them and reference them again and reread them. And actually these chats were a fantastic opportunity, because I got this book out. I'm like, holy crap, there's a ton of good stuff in this. And a lot of this, as you read through it, is geared towards salespeople. But we're all salespeople, so don't let that throw you off. You need to understand those things. And so within that book, Jill, there's kind of 4 main areas within there that I wanted to cover off on really, really quickly today, to at least get people started to realize that, okay, hey, here's a gap. And that's one of the best things that I always love in life, is when you find a gap in your knowledge, it's like, okay, cool. Right now I can go and work on those things and improve my knowledge in that area. So I always like it when I find those things.
Yeah, that's the best part. Because,
absolutely.
And it's never, right, we all know it's never just a one time. It is the continuous practice, like reflecting, how did that work? What did we notice? How did people respond? What do I need to tweak?
Yep. And
then let's practice again.
That's winning in life, when you're able to incorporate that as a habit. So the first area is what Roger calls the persuasion game. And part of this, as we're going through this information here today, everybody, is realize that you don't have to do these things, but you have to understand that these things are being done to you. And if you're able to identify these things, it makes your life a lot easier. So the used car example, like we were talking about earlier, is if you go to the used car dealership and he starts putting these techniques on you, you'll be able to say, right, okay, that's time pressure. So for example, it's the end of the month. The sale's going to expire today. You'd better buy the car today. Well, guess what? The new sale starts tomorrow. But they're trying to pressure you with time to get you to make a decision. And if you're aware of the technique, it loses this impact. So the classic example is good cop, bad cop. In the TV shows and things like this, one cop is oh, we're gonna throw the book at you, and rah, 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 and the other cop, he leaves the room, and the first cop is like, I really like you, and he's kind of a meanie, and he's in a bad mood today, but why don't you just tell us where you buried the body, and we can let you go. That's good cop, bad cop that they're using, right? And we see that in life in the plants, right? You'll see people that will try to use this technique on you. But with people, Jill, and this definitely crosses into the work that you and Tia do, is there's certain basic things that we need as human beings, right? So we love to be rewarded. And, it's a fantastic feeling when you're able to give a person a promotion or a raise for good work and things like this. But a lot of times people rely on that too much. And you will that only works for so long, right? We all know, right? You get a nice raise, and then maybe 2 or 3 paychecks later, you forget about it, right? It just becomes part of your pay package. A lot of times in plants, if there's a celebration, it's always the same thing. It's they do something, and then it's the pizza party. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, and it loses its impact over time.
It does.
The other one is fear of punishment, right? So it's kind of that carrot and stick situation. So a lot of times in dynamics in companies, your boss has that ability, right? They can punish you. They can give you the off shift. They can give you the crappy hours. They can put more work on you. And we've been in situations where, if bosses are able to put pressure on you for whatever reason, that's an uncomfortable place to be.
Yeah. And, even just the threat of it is enough to have our brains think it is a risk. Yes. And it's funny because we as humans are motivated more by what can be taken away, or what would be kind of the stick, more than it is the carrot. It's just different parts of our brain that are processing.
Oh, good
and
point.
So, right, when we think about that, just that illusion or perception of something could be a kind of a punishment, as you talk about, can often motivate people. Mm-hmm. But I love how you talk about these things, because they are all extrinsic. They're all outside of us, which is part of why they can't work long term. Yeah. They wear off, right? I love when you talk about pizza parties, because I'm like, please, no more pizza parties. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, they can be, but what are we doing to help people really feel good when we think about helping them have success? Yeah, so even when you talked about we can reward them with, raises, promotions, bonus, whatever those things are, but we can also reward people with just gratitude. Mm-hmm. There are some simple things we can do that just make them go, gosh, I'm more willing to come along with you because you see my value.
Yes. And that gets to our next 2 points, which is a perfect segue, is that internal values, right? Of if there's someone that you respect and they are showing that back to you, that's huge, right? And that costs nothing. The other ones are bonds, right? So that gets back to those pizza parties. Is mm-hmm. a lot of times in technical fields, we feel that, that fluffy stuff is a waste of time. Getting the team together to go play paintball. We got work to do. No, right? That builds that team relationship, and it's things that they can talk about. Hey, remember a couple of years ago when we did the paintball thing and I shot you in the back of the head, right? And people bring it up, and they remember that. Duncan's bringing up false scarcity, absolutely, and time pressure. Perfect on that, Duncan, because we see this on websites, right? You go to a travel website, and it says you're looking at a hotel in some location, and it says only 2 rooms left. Really? I've seen things that show that that's not true, right? They're using, to Duncan's point, they're using scarcity on you. And a lot of times they'll combine that with time. Only 2 rooms left. Deal ends in 2 hours, right? And they'll put a timer on there. Why are they doing that, right? Now you know why. They're putting
our brains. That's the psychology of sales, essentially. Our brains respond to that.
Yep.
And I think even as you talk about bonding, right? That's another area where, a lot of times we know we're so busy and that we have a lot happening during the day. And we think, well, we're having shared experiences every day, whether it's how we're working together or we're firefighting together. And those are important experiences. But the experiences, I think, like you said, that people remember, that we forge as these like powerful connectors, are things we do that are outside that normalcy. So
absolutely.
it doesn't mean it has to be after work hours, but like, how do you create something, even if it's, I don't know, some scavenger hunt you get to do together through the plant, or I don't know, trivia, but it can be something that you can do like even in your workspace. It can be virtual. Those are things that create the relationships that help as you think about how do we help persuade and influence better.
Yep. On that particular example, yeah, there was a really good plant manager in my past who was very good at motivating his teams and improving production and just the overall plant atmosphere. And he transferred to a new plant, and the safety record in that plant, not so good. And that was one of the first things that he wanted to work on. So he got everybody together and he had settled into the role. And he said, tell you what, guys, if we improve our OSHA safety rate here over the next quarter by whatever, I will run through the plant dressed as Batman. And they did it. And I mean, you looked at that graph of the OSHA recordables and the near misses, it went, cool, dropped off a cliff. And that happened to me 15 years ago, more. And I still remember that story, right?
Yeah.
Would I have remembered that story if it was just all right, we're going to do an initiative and we'll have the pizza party? And no, right? That was Don running through the plant like frickin' Batman. The plant was down and all that type of stuff, right? So there was no risk to food or anything like that, but that sticks with you. And Bonnie had a comment on here. Yep, we're going to be getting to what team members value. Absolutely. So I also kind of wanted to, one of the things that everybody knows on the chat that I do, right, is I'll talk at things at a high level and then kind of give you examples. So here's some examples of things that you can use to help improve kind of on that persuasion side of things when you're dealing with people. And there's some funny little rules. I pulled out a few here that I use all the time. Here's an interesting one, is when you're communicating information, use precise numbers. And so for us in technical fields, that comes naturally. But precise numbers are more convincing. It's really a weird situation, right? So if you say our complaint rate is 6.752 complaints per million units, that's more convincing than our complaint rate's around 6. Mm-hmm. Weird, isn't it?
Right.
Next one, consistency. And this is really, really important for us in what we do in technical fields. Is one of the rules that I had in the past was internally, people need to know what I'm going to do before I do it. Right? So if people come to you with a problem and they explain it and then their solution, which you should always do as well, and you say, yep, that's exactly what you should do. And they go, yeah, I knew you'd say that. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Because in quality, consistency is authority, right? People understand, they know what you're going to do. There's nothing worse. And we've been in this situation, right, Joel, where you work with somebody, you never know how they're going to react. They could get mad. They could get sullen. You don't know. And that's a hard place to be, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think as a professional, like it helps when people know what we stand for. And so when they come back, they're like, gosh, I already know what you were going to ask, or I knew what you were going to say, or what you were going to do. Part of that is because if we have communicated well what we stand for and what's important, then people know that. And that's part of being predictable as well. Mm-hmm. And I love when Duncan talks about incentivizing and values. And, there's so much more that can come around this, right? Because there's a lot that we haven't touched on at all here about building safe spaces, community, and belonging. And those things can set the framework for like amazing success. And that in itself is like 5 more shows. Yes. But we all know that there are times when we start on that path and we still need to help persuade people a little bit more, or as we're collaborating. And once again, maybe persuade isn't always the right word to use, but it's how do we explore these possibilities together and have them see something from a different perspective? Yes. So maybe as we frame it like that helps, because these are all ways of helping frame things, but it's like, how do we bring people along with us? You all know there are some people who are like, yay, and they're in the front, and there are people that are still way in the back. And so we need a whole slew of methods to help as we're trying to bring our teams together and our organizations forward.
Yes. Yeah, it's a good point, Joel. I mean, don't get hung up on the word persuade, right? Collaborate, lead. There's all kinds of different words you can substitute for that. 2 other really cool techniques that you can use as well is, here's an interesting one, is showing something in writing is much more powerful than simply saying it. There's a saying in the legal world is, write it down, show the contract, right? And that's why when you're buying a house, for example, the realtor always wants to write the contract, right? Because the contract is like, oh, this is all written down. As people, we naturally think, oh, well, it's written, it must be true. No, not true either.
Don't we even say if we don't have a record, it was never done?
Yeah, exactly.
Even
Exactly
we
the
put
same
some
thing.
stock into having things written down.
Yeah, another good one is testimonials, right? So if you're trying to move something forward in a plant and you have testimonials from other people, maybe outside of the company, it's like, oh yeah, we did the same thing in our company and it was amazing and we got these results, and that's powerful.
Yeah.
That's backing up and giving credibility to what you're saying.
Absolutely. Yes.
Duncan makes a good point here, right? Provenance, right? Mexican honey, Manuka honey from New Zealand, these type of things, right? Being able to have that type of, yes, the authority associated with this is huge. Also, when you're working with people, and this gets back to your point as well, is that when you're with them, this is the win-win, right? That you had referenced earlier, Jill, is people, I think we're very uncomfortable with this sometimes, but you have to ask for more than you expect. Why? Because you need to give the other side a win. So if I'm working for you, Jill, and I come to you and I want to raise, right? I'm gonna say, and you see this with unions too, right? They'll ask for the craziest stuff. It's like, okay, Jill, I want a $50,000 raise. I want a car. I want to increase my vacation time to 8 weeks a year. And you're going, whoa. Tell you what, the last two we can't do those, but how about if I give you a $30,000 raise? How's that? Well, all right, you got me. I'll okay, fine. I'll in reality, I was hoping for a $10,000 raise, right?
Yeah, and I think there's a balance there as well, especially, I think about professionals when we're like, here's the list of improvements we'd like to see for the organization next year. I have seen times where people are like, that's too much. You all want too much. Yes. And it almost creates kind of this situation where they shut down. And so I think that's also part of, even before this, how are we building relationships to know how people receive information, what they value, so that we can kind of navigate this process to say, do I have someone who responds well to, like, I'm going to throw it all at you and more?
Yeah.
Or do I need to kind of mold it a little bit differently so that you are still open to receive the communication and be in the conversation with me?
Very good point, right? We'll talk a little bit more about, you need to understand how the person you're talking with and trying to influence or persuade processes information. We'll talk about that a little more too. But part of it then, as you're building this out, let's say that you have 3 alternatives of things that you're looking for projects for next year, and they're all great projects. You could go to your boss at the plant or whatever and say, okay, here's the different projects I've identified. Which of these 3 do you like, right? And let them pick, right? Yeah. It's a win-win, right? You're setting up, and that's called, and this wasn't on my notes, but this is called talking past the sale. So of these 3 things, which should we implement next year? Well, the plant manager may be saying, well, none of them, right? What you're implying in that is, okay, well, we're going to do one of these 3. Which of these 3 do you want us to do? And you're letting them pick. Well, it's like, oh, I like number 1. Let's do that, right? You want, any of the 3 are fine. And that was your original objective in the first place, was to have one of those 3 things. To your point, Jill, you probably didn't have time to do all 3 anyway, but you're getting what you want and you've given that person a win as well. Wow, comments are fantastic here, guys.
And it is all in the approach, right? Even when you are unsure, if you're like, gosh, I don't know, pick something like responding differently to customer complaints make a difference for you in X, Y, or Z, and link that back to something that's important. Yeah. That is not like this overt persuasion or influence method, but it's opening. The goal is like, how do we open the conversation to bring them in to go, I never thought about that. Or if they're like, no, I don't think so, but this, or this could make a difference for me. Like, it's all about keeping the conversation flowing, because when we stop, that's when we can't make progress together.
Exactly. And think about, to your point earlier as well, is what are their goals, right? So the plant manager may have a goal of reducing the budget next year by 5%. And you want a new software program for document control, right? Those money, right? Expensive. but the existing program you have is garbage. Okay, well, go out and find a better alternative that's cheaper. So now you can go to the plant manager and say, hey, good news. I've identified a way to save some money. Oh, awesome. What do you got? Well, hey, I found this new document control system that's cheaper than what we currently have, and it's better. Oh, well, fantastic. Done. Right? He gets to reduce his budget, and you get a document control system that's better. Think outside.
And it's all about figuring out, what do people value? What are their priorities? How do we align it to business? But also, I think raising the bar on how we even present that.
Yep.
So there's so many factors that play into it.
Exactly. Other quick points as we're kind of going through these is association. So why do food companies hire celebrities for endorsements? Why did Kamala Harris bring Beyonce on stage? Right? They're associating, right? They're associating their fame and prestige and their goodwill with whatever it is their product is that they're selling. Mm-hmm. So association is very powerful. It kind of gets into that testimonial piece.
But it also talks about the building relationships at work, because if you're thinking, gosh, I want to go to my plant manager or this VP with some idea, have you talked to other people that are maybe around them and that you can collaborate with to get more information? And so that when you come together and present this to them, they're not like, gosh, it's just you. Like, no, I actually chatted with this ops person or the supply chain or the finance person. And, this is what I learned along the way. This is what we'd like to share with you. It adds to that association, and having other people kind of, I don't want to say stamp it, but at least it shows that you're thinking bigger than just this one thing. You're thinking more about the business and how people are included in it.
Yep, absolutely. Megan had a question for us here, Jill. See what you think of this here. So can you provide a suggestion for helping influence a change of mindset from internal blame or victim mindset to more positive mindset for a peer-to-peer relationship? Wow.
Well, I think it depends on your current relationship with someone. Because usually when we're a victim, we do the whole like, oh no, like that's not me. And like, I have no control. And so sometimes a gentle nudge of like, really, you have no control? Like, what would control look like to you? I think helps people start thinking about it. But I also have times where I'm like, really, if you are here to bitch, then you better be ready to make some changes. And I even say straight out, like, you're not a victim here. You are strong, powerful. You are intelligent. You are here for a reason. Sometimes we have to remind people that they are worthy. So there's extremes, as you say, and somewhere in between is likely where someone may fall.
Right.
But helping them examine it and own it, like, wow, I do come forward with passing it off, but we really need them to step into the game with us.
Yep. I mean, and the bottom line there is to understand it. Nobody changes unless they want to, right? You can help them, kind of point them toward the door, but they got to walk through. And sometimes this gets into NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and Tony Robbins and things like this, is a lot of times people get in these patterns and they're used to that, right? They're just playing this automatic internal woe is me type thing. And sometimes if you help them, to your point, Joe, which is very good advice, is if you can help them break that pattern and see outside of it, sometimes they'll make that move. So that's a hard thing, Megan. It's something, I mean, it's not a light switch. That's for sure.
No, and I love that you say it's not something that just happened yesterday. These are things that they've probably been carrying around. So you may have to explore that, but it may be even as simple as, I mean, I have little cards here. Like, this is an affirmation I do this week because I'm changing something in my mindset. Sometimes it's as simple as helping people be like standing up and being like, I can own this. Like, I have control over this part, or I am stepping into it. There are a whole variety of ways. So Megan, I know we can talk more about that if you want.
and part of this too is people become invested over time. Is back to the car dealership analogy. Why do they keep you at the dealership so long? If you're looking at buying a car, right? They put you in the office and they go and they do stuff and they bring you coffee and you're there for hours and hours and hours and hours. The reason for that is this is a technique of time investment, right? The more time you invest in something, the less likely you are to abandon it. It's the same thing at casinos, right? You see people sitting there. Gambling for me, I don't understand at all. But people are pulling the lever on the slot machine, And they're sitting there for hours. And in their minds, they're thinking, okay, it's due to pay now. It has to pay now. Right. I've been doing this for so long, it's going to pay off. And that's why the casinos have all the money, is people have that false belief and the casinos capitalize on that.
Yeah. You know, I noticed Duncan has a comment about power, and this is something that we talk about in our workshops and our programs about empowering culture.
Yeah.
Because there is this, the traditional command and control model is I have power over you. And when people feel like they don't have power, it's amazing how they will step back, not own, and not engage.
Mm-hmm.
So as leaders, the more, and as humans, as individuals together, the more we can say, let's have power with, like together we have superpowers and even power to, like, I'm going to give power to you to have, like Duncan says, agency over my life, agency over these decisions, agency over what I'm doing here at work, or at least some part of it, can be amazing on how it changes how we look at life and how we look at work.
Yep, absolutely. So the next part of the section of the book is analyzing the person you're dealing with, the person you're trying to persuade. And this gets back to the comments that we had earlier. So here's kind of a cool one. So one of these little hints in the book is this. Okay, so I've got these two things here, Joel. Oh, there we go.
Yes,
right.
Look at that.
Right, great. What are they? Right. Well, they're $20 bills. They both have the picture of Andrew Jackson. They are both printed with green ink. They're both the same size. That's what's known as matching. Some people are mismatchers. Well, one is forward, one is backward, one is right side up, one is upside down, one is crinkly, one is not. Those are mismatchers. Those are people who look for differences in things. So there are people who try and find things that are similar and people that find things that are different. Now, of course, everything's on a continuum, right? Nobody's at the extreme end on everything. But just that little piece of information on the style of that person will help you identify what they're looking for. Because if you're a matcher and you're going to a mismatcher and saying, hey, look how these things are all the same, they're immediately going to come back and say, well, here's what's different. And now where do you go, right? If you're able to frame it in ways that they look at, then you're speaking their language. You need to understand their language.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's as easy as like, what would it take for you to consider this idea? Yeah. Like, that's not too hard of a question, but it also, once again, opens the conversation for someone to maybe help us understand, like, does it need to match, mismatch? Like, what are the things that they're looking for so that we can kind of analyze this persuade? Because you may not actually have to do much persuasion when you know what it is that they need. Yeah.
So if we had this in place for a year, what would it look like? Right. So you're getting them to think about it, and you're also talking past the sale. You're getting them to think about this is already there. Oh, yeah. Well, we would be at this and this, right? So think in those terms. Their motivation. What's motivating them? Are they looking at things from a pleasure or pain situation? Are they going towards something? Are they moving away from something? Are they looking at this from a self-centered viewpoint? How does it benefit them? Are they looking at more from an external standpoint? So how is the plant manager evaluating this in his terms? You need to understand what they're thinking about. So you may think in the plant that this is something that's external. It's this is something that impacts the plant and stuff like that. Maybe. It may be internal. So let's say the plant manager's having a rough year and his numbers aren't looking too good and he's worried about his job. Internal.
Yeah. And I love how you bring that up, because it's typically that the reason is not the reason. It's the reason behind the reason. And so this all goes back to even culture and values and beliefs. When we think about decisions are based on emotions, 90% of decisions are based on emotions. And it may be because the data you've presented fits with my value or belief, and it seems to be an easy yes. We've all had situations where the data seems really clear on the direction and people are resistant. And that's because there is something behind what they're probably telling us that makes it hard to understand their motivation. And so it takes us, we got to do our work. Yeah. We need to go further to understand that maybe they are worried about like their job or their family, or maybe there's something happening outside in their life, or there are a whole lot of things that factor into that. But it takes us as leaders to be intentional, to have conversations, to know more about people, to say, what is it that's going to help them say, you know what, that actually could be a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, if you go to the plant manager's office and he's in a bad mood that day, is that a good time to pitch your proposal? No, it's not. It's a terrible time. So Duncan's giving some great advice here as well too. Thanks, Duncan. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Everybody definitely read through the comments.
I know, and I love that. And I think thinking about what type of responses you're willing to take are important. Because once again, when we give people an answer for like a no, then does that mean conversation over? Or is that just we redirect? So I love that when we think about what are the possible outcomes when we ask questions, so that we know if it's the right question we're asking.
Exactly. And so this was alluded to earlier. How do they make decisions? Are they fast or slow? So that's a pretty easy one to identify. And generally in technical fields, we're slow, right? We want data. We want information. We want to think about it for a while.
We need to know lots of things.
Yes. And people who make fast decisions say, yes, let's go with that. Right. Well, just as quickly, they can turn around the next day and say, no, let's don't do that.
That's a really good point. They may agree with you today, but tomorrow they may be like, nope, I take that back.
Right. So you need to, right. So if you try and pressure a slow decision maker into a fast decision, no, they're going to be slower, right? They're going to be like a turtle, right? They're going to pull back and not make a decision at all. And now you've got to fight that resistance that you have created because you didn't understand their style.
And I think this is a good one, Brian, when we think about, you mentioned when we started that even if this is a skill that we're like, yeah, I don't know if I really see that I need to use this a lot. There are people that are likely using these things on us. And you mentioned that technical people seem to get the stereotype that we take a while to make decisions. So, even to notice that when people are perhaps asking you to make a decision faster than you maybe feel comfortable with, or what is it that comes up that that maybe helps you understand, maybe it's a frustration or a challenge, or you're like, gosh, just give me some space. I think even for us to be aware of that, because that also influences our interactions and just honestly the energy around like this whole situation.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so a good comment here from a user, right? So we're talking about emotional awareness, right? And sitting around and understanding the people around you. Next subject here is how to persuade. And this is a fun one because we don't really think about this in what we do. Charisma is real. Oh, is charisma real? It absolutely is. There was a salesperson I worked with in my past career, a gentleman named Frank. Absolutely oozed charisma. And so it probably wouldn't go over this time in the world, but he was your stereotypical Italian sales guy. He had the nice Rolex watch. He had the gold chains. And he would come in the office in the morning. Everything he did was absolutely good natured, and he wasn't doing it in a bad way. He would walk in the office in the morning. Where our offices were and things like that. There was a big area with cubicles and things like this. And he would walk in the morning and not addressing anybody in particular, just walking through the front door. And he would very loudly say, "Good morning, ladies," in a very sing-songy way. And then everybody in the office would respond back, "Good morning, Frank." And it was just part of that ritual and that charisma he would bring to that role. And as a result of that, is there anything I wouldn't do for Frank? No. He was an amazing guy, and I loved doing things for him. That's charisma. Why do I incorporate dad jokes into this chat? Humor is incredibly powerful, and it's charismatic. You don't have to be all the time in work. Tell jokes, have some fun, help people celebrate things, display those skills. Treat everyone, right? This is huge in plants, right? Treat everyone as if they're important, right? A key marker and a key indicator in plants of the success of a plant manager is, does he know his team? And I'm not talking about his direct reports. He needs to know, or she needs to know, everybody in that plant. What are their names? What are their spouses? What are their children? What do they like to do? Those type of things are incredibly valuable. And that's why I like when I see Tim as being very smart on LinkedIn when he puts information on there about himself, right? That allows us to understand Tim as a person.
Yeah, I was going to say, even with the charismatic, I think the other part is people look for connection with each other.
Yes.
And so when you talk about that salesperson, they were looking for almost, it's a call and response type connection to engage people in this ritual, really is what it is. I think the other part is understanding, like, what are the things that make people comfortable and connect with you? Because when we do that, at the end of the day, like when we let people know that they matter, like that is so powerful. When we see them, when we hear them, when we acknowledge that. But I think we've all had times too where we're like, we haven't been able to build relationships up to the point where we want to be able to go, oh my gosh, you matter so much to me. And just be like, and I think addressing these things just as they are, like, I know we haven't been able to connect a lot over this, but here's something I want to bring to you. Yeah. I think there's some different approaches we can take, because when you say charismatic, you might have saw me go like, ugh, get a little squirrely on that. Like, It's almost like when we talk about persuade, and it sometimes causes people to cringe because of some annotation that we have with that word. So I love when we think about, like, how do we build connection? And that could be deep connection because we know someone really much better. It could even be this high level, like, we don't have this deep connection right now, but that doesn't change the fact that, like, we can do a win-win on this.
Yeah. There's a company I work with, and there's a team member on there who is extremely dedicated, very knowledgeable, highly intelligent. And part of her roles is she's maintaining supplier information. And so there's some metrics around that. And she loves reporting on that information every week. And part of the little game that I have with her, and she knows I'm teasing her, is I'm like, okay, so what's your percentage on the database this week? 84.5. Oh, not 85%. Right. And she'd be like, right. And then we start laughing because she knows I'm just teasing her. Right. So being able to build those relationships and have a little fun around it is absolutely critical.
Yeah.
Yeah. James nails it here. Right. You have to be unique and relatable. You can't fake this. You can't fake it. There was a salesperson who called on us on our lab back at when I was in the laboratory, and she was selling equipment, and she had memorized a fact about me and a fact about Frank, the other microbiologist. And so she would come in and say, "Hey, Bryan, how's Star Trek? Have you watched Star Trek lately? Hey, Frank, how's that tennis backhand going?" And it was, it's so blatantly obvious that she opened up her portfolio of information on us before she walked in the front door so that she could be relatable to us. And it had the absolute opposite effect, because as soon as she left, we would laugh. We would just laugh because it was so dumb.
And it's interesting when you bring that up, because like that lands differently for everyone, because you're like, ugh, not for me. And I think about, when people are like, gosh, are your kids about 15 now or 16? I'm like, wow, you actually remember? Yeah. So even if they maybe looked it up, my take on that is they actually still took the time to go, I'm going to come meet with this person. And like, where were we last time? So there's some effort there. And I think but I love how you bring it up, because the same approach doesn't work and land the same for everyone. So once again, it comes back to what is meaningful for the person that you are engaging in this conversation with.
Right. And we can pick that up. And Tim and Vaughn are talking about this. As human beings, we can pick it up if somebody's not being genuine. And they're viewing you as a tool to get what they want. And I think that's where that cringy assessment comes in that we're talking about here is, don't do that. Don't go through and as analytical people say, okay, I'm going to create the procedure on how to persuade people. No, no, you won't. You'll create the procedure to crash and burn. So part of this too, right? And sometimes in quality, we forget this, right? Is catching somebody doing something right is much more powerful than always being, person. It's very simple and very easy to do and say, hey, guys, fantastic work on that report last week. Ooh, right?
Yeah. Like, how could we do that all the time?
Yeah.
That's a simple persuasion, because they might have been like, oh, I never really thought about that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. We've just opened a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're talking with somebody, nobody else matters. Right? That person that you're talking with, if you can sit there and have a conversation with them, look them in the eye and be genuinely curious and interested, is that cringy? No, that's being a human being. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also remembering that we, as we build relationships, even though we wish, like, "Oh, Bryan, I wish we could talk every week." Well, the reality is that you have things going on, I have things going on, and we don't. But
Mhm.
as Larry says, like, when we show up in the moment where we do have time together, like, can we be real? Can we be fully present and be in this conversation? And know that it might be a while before we connect again. And
Mhm.
that's okay. But that's also just understanding kind of like, what do you need out of that relationship and what can you give in that relationship?
Right. Yeah. And so yeah. So Bon is right. Very correct. Set the phone aside. So if I'm talking to you, Jill, and I start doing this, what?
Yep.
Yeah, whatever. No, terrible. Right. Put it down. Put the phone down. I think
Yeah.
that's probably what irritates our generation. Well, you're younger than me, but
But
with kids,
you
right?
probably just heard my little alarm thing go off because I'm like, oh, I didn't close my calendar. Dang it. Even
Yeah.
that can be important because it signals to someone like, oh, you have a timer for when our time is up together.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that we don't have all day together, but we can also, shame
Yeah.
on me, I usually get that closed right away, but I didn't.
Mhm.
And, those are
So
the little things that make a difference for people to go, you have time and space for me.
yeah, if you have an office, how's it set up? Do you
Mhm.
have are you facing the door? Or are you facing the wall? A little trick I did. This is a funny little one I just remembered. Is in my offices, what I would do is so my desk always faced the door, so I could see who's coming in and greet them. And I put my clock on the wall above the door,
Mm.
so I could look at the clock without them seeing me looking at the clock. Right.
Oh, yeah. And, I had a little table with 2 chairs in my office. So
Uh-huh.
that way we didn't have to sit across from each other. Like if somebody came in to chat, I mean, unless it was just that quick, like, hey, I'm popping in. But like if we're gonna chat, like I'm gonna come over here. We're gonna actually do this together versus me over here and you over there.
Oh, oh, that's a huge one.
It's amazing.
So
Just
for
those
yeah,
small things make a difference.
oh, that's brilliant, Jill. So yeah, you triggered a memory with me as well on that.
Cool.
Is if you're in a plant and you're doing an audit, right? So you have an SQF and audit going on, or FDA, or who whatever. Don't sit opposite the table from them. Sit on the same side.
Mhm. Yeah. I
Don't
like
sit
to
at
sit
the
next to the
front.
auditor and be like, here, let me
Sit
show you all
next
my
to them.
stuff.
That sends a message that you're collaborating.
Mhm.
Opposite is no, we're in conflict. You and I, we are adversaries. Nope, sit on the same type of table. You're working together. Try it.
Mhm.
Makes a big difference.
It does. Yep, and I love, Duncan, that you said, like, communicate authentically.
Yeah.
That is the easiest thing to do, and we all have different styles, approaches, everything lands different. Like, be you. People are more likely to go like, "Huh, that was interesting." But that's how they are.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, and we've had the good luck of meeting each other and saying hello at a few conferences this last year. And when you and I meet each other in person, we're exactly the same as we are right here. Right.
Yeah. Even though I
We
do have to look up a little bit more. Here, I just have to look at the screen, but, I'm short and you happen to be tall, so I gotta look up a little more.
yeah, that is true, right? We're all kind of the same height here in Zoom world.
That's the only thing that was different.
Exactly. So the fourth area is you need to have a game plan, right? So getting back to more of the tactical side of what we're talking about here today is stage one is you need to establish your objective, right? So what do I want to accomplish, right? So to the early example, I want a new software program to manage document control. Um, find out what they want.
Yeah.
So the plant manager from my previous example, he needs to cut some costs from budgets. Okay, good, right? That's what he's focused on. And this time of year, where's the plant management team, right? They're squirreled away somewhere trying to create the budget for next year
Mhm.
and figuring out, oh my God, we have to do more with less. How are we going to do that? What are the pressure points? What are the strengths and weaknesses on both sides? And analyze those and think about those from your perspective. The goal with this is to try and understand them as much as you can. What are the things that they're worried about? What are those things that are weaknesses on their side? So the plant manager may have a boss, the vice president, who's difficult or that he has to please in some way. How can you help achieve those objectives in those areas?
Yeah. I
Duncan,
think that's
throw me off.
important because, like these tactical parts, because once again, if we want to bring people along with us, we do have to do some preparation on our end.
Oh,
If we're in
absolutely.
this spot where we're really kind of doing I don't want to say a pitch, but kind of a pitch to them.
Yeah.
If we're early in it, it might just be the discovery and it might look a little bit different. But like when you're ready to be like, all right, here, I'm going in for, this is the moment.
Yeah.
We still have
Well,
to
that's
do
a
our
good point.
homework.
Yeah. When's the right time to
Mhm.
talk with them about that? Friday at 5 p.m.?
Yep.
No. Right? Do you just randomly jump into their office and spring it on them? No.
Mhm.
Hey, you need to put together your game plan. That's a very, very good point, Jill. The final point on this kind of this 4-step process is look for compromise. How do you make this a win-win? And again, that's why it's very important to go in these situations with the ability to give them a win. Okay, well, Bryan, I can see what you're saying relative to the software. You're absolutely right. This is going to save us some money, which is fantastic. Can you do this for me?
Mhm.
Absolutely. Love to do that. How do I make that happen for you? Right?
Yeah. I think we've also gotten so used to compromise, compromise, compromise. That definitely is a factor in when we are looking to do things. I
Yeah.
think if we also even think like, how can this be a win-win?
Mhm.
And compromise isn't necessarily a win-win because at the end, I don't know about you, but I think of compromise like I win, but I lose. And
Mm,
sometimes that's okay in some situations. But when I shift my mindset to be like, I know this can be a win-win for both of us, like a genuine, we get things out of it and we don't have to give things up.
right.
You know, even framing it that way, how is your approach going to shift because you have this different mindset of like, we can all really get a win here.
Yep. Absolutely. Wow. All right, we're already at the
Oh,
5-minute
nice.
mark here. So as I promised, let me throw here in the chat is the link to Jill and Tia's site at Catalyst with part 1 of our
Part one.
conversation. And in that, we talked about the 8 magic keys that you need to understand for persuasion. So
Mhm.
definitely check that out. We didn't talk about that really at all here today. So there's definitely more in
Oh,
that area.
yeah.
Um, so as you're kind of thinking about summarizing this, Jill, what kind of comes to mind for you?
I still always think it's about putting people back in, opening conversations to bring people into the conversation so that they want to come along with you
Mhm.
and being open to their ideas may actually be better and make things better. Awesome. So persuasion isn't always about my idea, right? You need to do my idea, but like, how do we create a solution
Mm.
together? It's collaborating, it's relationships, it's safe spaces, all those parts.
Oh, that's a
So
good point.
I don't know if that's
Yeah,
necessarily a summary, but I also love a lot of the comments that are like, you know what, be authentic.
right.
If we're trying to bring people along with us and they get a hint of us being a little bit, we even had a few of those cringe moments. If they feel a little cringe, they're not coming.
No. Or if they get the slightest hint that maybe you've got a hidden agenda and there's something else that
Yeah.
is right.
Yeah.
This,
That just
this all
erodes
gets back to what we
trust.
started, and this is why we started with this on the chat. Was it's all about that credibility, building that consistency, being a leader in these
Mhm.
areas, and learning these skill sets. And what you'll find, right, it's kind of a virtuous or a vicious cycle. If you display consistency and you make good decisions and you help collaborate and you bring these things forward, the next time you go and you have a discussion around these things for the next thing that you need to get done, that discussion is going to be a lot easier.
Mhm.
Hey, if you set yourself up for failure or you put that person in a bad position or you didn't treat them fairly, they're going to remember that. They're going to
Yeah.
remember that a long time.
And there's a lot to say that goes to reciprocity. If we bring people along in this kind, caring manner, gosh, when they have something they're doing, they're going to be like, you know what? I need to get Bryan involved. Last time we did this, this, and this.
Yeah.
So for those moments where we're like, gosh, they don't think about us or bring us along with them, once we start demonstrating we're willing to bring them with us, they'll start reciprocating.
Yep. Absolutely. So here's the if I can type
Mm, awesome.
AS.
Wow,
Yeah.
our hour does go so quickly together, and I love the audience. Thank you so much for being here
Oh
and like
God.
great comments and questions, and that really adds a lot as we talk about this. And once again, do it all together because, as we know, food safety, you all know, takes a village.
Yep, absolutely. So, yep, there's the book, Secrets of Power Persuasion by Roger Dawson. Definitely read that. And then also, I wanted to put in here, I haven't put this here in a while, is part of this is building that community, is sharing information. And so on Locals, I have a free group where I post recalls and other stuff that catches my attention. So if you haven't signed up, sign up for it. I'll post new information in there about 3 times a week. And I'll also put respond to people who are signed up. So you'll get notifications. You don't have to go in there and hunt and peck for stuff yourself. I'll send you notifications when new stuff is in there so that you can go and take a look at it yourself.
Awesome.
Oof, fantastic. And like I said at the beginning of this, just barely scratching the surface. This is one of those things you're going to learn for your entire life, and you'll get better and better at it. I promise you will. So with that, everybody, we have to close out our chat here for today. Thank you, Jill. Amazing
Thank you.
content.
My pleasure.
And thank you to our, I just love the community we're building here on the Food Safety Chat, and all the amazing people, all the smart people, I mean, we've got here, and all the amazing comments. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it. And of course, we'll be back here next Friday at the same time, 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern, for the next Food Safety Chat, where we live stream on LinkedIn and YouTube. And in the meantime, enjoy your weekend. Have a good time. Go out and play in the snow if you've got a little bit of snow out there. Enjoy the fall, and we'll see you back there then. Thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks, Jill. We'll see you next week.